leadership and then a large group from sales leadership. So big surprise there, because what we are going to be talking about today, is the importance of sales management, right? And so what I thought I'd do is very, very briefly introduce myself. Don't worry, I won't go in for too long. I'll skip the big bio, and I'll just let you get a sense for the highlights, because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I am going to talk about some of our research. I'm going to talk about some of the findings from our top performing sales organization research, also from our What Sales Winners Do Differently research. I'll mix it up a little bit, but I'm also going to throw in some stories and some experiences that I've had in the past. So as John outlined, so I basically run EMEA with Rain Group. We specialize in helping clients, mostly services firms, sell complex high-end B2B services to other firms. So that's what we do. And in terms of my track record, so I actually started my career, it's a bit untraditional for someone who does what I do, I would say, in the sense that, I've actually never had a quota-bearing full-time sales role. But I've always been selling, and I've always been buying. And so when I started my career, I started with Big Four management consulting firms, spent time with 2 out of the Big Four, and that's really where I discovered my love of sales and selling and generating business, developing business. And after doing that for a number of years, I would jokingly say I decided to get a real job, and I spent 10 years in a financial services firm called ING. And during that time, I did no selling whatsoever. So I did not sell a single thing, but through a succession of management and later on executive roles, I ended up buying a lot. So I was either the outright decision maker, the domino, or an influencer, or part of a committee in a number of projects that we bought, services that we bought in the 1 million plus 2 million, 3 million range. And so that gave me an interesting perspective on both sides of the table. I've sold before, but you've also bought before. It's just interesting to see that different dynamic, and it helps you recognize how things come across from the other side of the table. And then obviously, at some point, I also started moving into management and executive roles. And so my last role, I was former CMO of the private banking division. And so from that perspective, I got firsthand expertise and experience in, sales and marketing management. What is it like to manage a sales organization? What is it like to grow a sales organization? And then from that, I moved into what I do now. So I'm a sales trainer, consultant, coach with Rain Group. And let me talk a little bit about, maybe very quickly introduce Rain Group. So for those of you who don't know Rain Group, we are a B2B sales performance improvement firm. And so we work with companies to help them, what I say, measurably and substantially improve key metrics in sales performance. Sometimes that's revenue growth, increasing win rates, protecting margins, entering new markets, but that's what we do. How we do it, primarily through assessments, coaching, training, and consulting. And one of the things that we do that I believe makes us a little bit special in the marketplace is we do a lot of primary research, and especially for a firm of our size, we're still relatively small, and a firm that's only been around for about 14 years, that is, that's exceptional, I would say. There's not that many firms out there that can say that. But there's a very, very good reason why we do that research. We do that research because we believe that the world of buying and the world of selling is changing dramatically and quickly. And so we feel that in order to advise our clients in a way that makes sense and in a way that we know works, we need to keep our finger on the pulse of the market. And so every year or so, we try to do a big research project. And a couple of years ago, we started, well, we didn't start, but a couple of years ago, we asked ourselves the question, what makes buyers buy from one firm versus another? What is it that makes buyers decide, I work with firm A versus firm B? And so that research led to our book called Inside Selling. But even while we were doing the research, we felt like it was great research, and it was very, very good and targeted at individual sellers and understanding what they were doing to win deals. But we really we wanted to look at the company perspective as well. because I bet everybody on this call who's a sales manager or a CXO or an executive, you'll recognize that, yeah, it's great to have individual players, but ultimately you need to have a great team. And that great team needs to be supported with a great infrastructure and great processes and all those things. And so what we did then was, in the next research wave, and that was last year, we looked at, well, what is it that makes some organizations stand out? What is it that makes some organizations do so much better in terms of things like winning new business, keeping clients' relationships going over time, growing accounts and strategic accounts? What is it that these firms do differently? And that's some of the research that I want to talk to you about today. So whenever we look at, if you want to talk about top performing sales organizations, you need to start by defining what those look like. And the way that we do it is we look at our data set and we look at a couple of key metrics, and then we look at and we try to understand, well, what is it that makes some of these firms in some of these categories stand out? And so in research, we ended up categorizing respondents into 3 groups. So there's elite performers. This is 7% of the data set, 7% of the respondents.
Hey, Ago, are you showing your presentation?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry,
I should be.
Yeah, we're not seeing it.
There we go. And good for, well, thanks for telling me that. So there we go. Well, you didn't miss anything except a nice picture with a nice slide with a picture of myself, but I'm sure that that's not the most important part. Hey, John, is this up? Can you see elite top performers and the rest defined?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment. All right. So let's see.
Oh.
Hey, John, can I make this?
Yeah,
Can you see it?
We see it now. Go ahead.
All right, excellent. See, there we go. A little hint from John. If we're in a room together, I'd say a little round of applause for John, but that doesn't work so well in the webinar. But thanks for telling me that, by the way. So anyway, back to the story. So we categorize, for this research, we categorize respondents into 3 groups. So the first group is elite performers. These firms represent 7% of all respondents. And the second category is top performers. That includes the elite performing category. That's about 1 out of 5 or 20% of all the respondents. And then there's the rest. And so the way to think about it is that there is a category of elite performers, the top 7% of firms that we studied, that we researched. They have an average proposal rate of 50% or greater. In fact, I'll show you what it is on the next slide. It's well over 50%. Both annual revenue and profitability increase year on year. Their organization's annual sales goals are both challenging, so they're really stretch goals. These guys don't make it easy on themselves, but they meet those goals consistently over time, and their pricing strategy is clearly premium. They want to capture maximum prices in line with the value they provide. So that's the elite performer category. The top performers then, top 20% of respondents, average proposal win rate slightly lower, but still 40% or greater. Annual revenue and profitability is either equal or increases. And then the rest is basically same as elite. Now that tells you 2 things. Number one is there is a small number of firms out there, 7%, that do extremely well. In fact, you might say 20% are doing very, very well. That also means that 80% of firms are not doing very well. By not doing very well, I don't mean that they're necessarily bad. I mean they don't meet these criteria. They may not have stretch organizational sales goals. They may not meet their sales goals consistently over time. They may not have an average proposal win rate of 40% or greater. So it doesn't mean that they're bad across all of these. It means that in one or other category, they didn't meet these criteria. So that's a pretty interesting takeaway, right? So let's talk about win rates then. And I'll just kind of take this one right to left. So the average win rate, if you look at this, the average win rate that we found in the elite performer category is 73%. So there's again 7% of these firms that we researched have a win rate of 3 out of 4 deals. That's huge. I mean, that's tremendous. And by the way, keep in mind this is an average win rate. That's tremendous, right? But it also tells us that for 80% of the firms that we studied, the win rate is 4 in 10 or 40%. John, did you want to
Yeah, I'm just
interject
saying
here?
and I think there's a bit of a lag on your, oh no, here it is. It's come up now. There was a bit of a lag on your slide coming up. That's all.
Oh, good. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
So the average win rate, again, 3 out of 4 for elite performers, but less than 40% or 40% for everybody else. What we also found is when firms lose, they lose to primarily 2 players. So first, yes, they lose to competitors, right? But they also lose just as much almost to no decision. And so and this is consistent, by the way, with research that we're seeing out there from other firms and other players in our space, where it seems that the average win rate across all categories is about 1 in 2. And then of those deals that are lost, again, 1 in 2 are lost to doing nothing, right? So that's kind of, setting up the research a little bit in terms of how we define top performance. It's not the only metric that we've used, win rates. That is one of the more important ones. So then what we did was, it wasn't just that top performers won more. I mean, that's what makes them top performers, right? This is fairly standard. This is fairly, I would say this is to be expected. We also wanted to dig deeper, and we really wanted to understand, well, why did they win more? What factors can we find that correlate with higher win rates? And so clearly there's a correlation between figure number 4. When organizations meet their sales goals, their win rates will go up, right? In other words, if they hit their goals, they're going to win more often. That's not surprising. But what was surprising, what was interesting, was when organizations focus on value, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. When organizations are value driving or focused on delivering value to customers, their win rates go up. When organizations have more mature sales processes, their win rates go up. When organizations have a stronger investment in sales training, their win rates go up. And what you're not seeing on this slide, but which is the big story that I'll talk about now, is when organizations have high performance, strong sales management practices in place and sales coaching practices and sales leadership plays their role as they should be, win rates go up. So the key message is that there are a number of factors or a couple of factors that are clearly correlated with higher win rates. You might say that these are the things that drive win rates. So it's not just about the behavior of individual sellers. It's not just about the market you operate in. It's not just about how good your product or service is. It's really about, do you deliver value? Do you have a mature sales process? Do you invest in skills building? And do you have strong sales management practices? So let's look forward a little bit, and let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the sales management piece. Actually, before I do that, let me kind of reach out to John. John, I know that you guys have a tremendous amount of data, right? From the on the coaching side and on the role of sales management. What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree when I say that sales management is a huge driver of win rates and of high performance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I would say that 2 of the things that stand out from what you just said there is the sales process, a mature sales process, and one that is properly defined, that is regularly validated and updated, that's a dynamic one. That I think makes a huge difference, because it's one thing to have good sales management, but you need to be managing to a process as well. So I think those 2 things go hand in hand, and they're incredibly important. And we find that, and our research ourselves, and the research that I've done at former companies that I was involved in, is sales. For me, the sales manager is the biggest revenue multiplier in any organization, because it stands to reason that if you have a high performing, well trained sales manager, he's going to bring out the best in your salespeople. And if you can incrementally improve each salesperson, or even most of the salespeople, you'll obviously get a significant revenue bump. So for my mind, the sales manager is absolutely the greatest revenue multiplier you have.
Love it. And thanks for chiming in. I would agree with that. But let's look a little bit about, one thing is say that, sales management is important and sales managers are the biggest revenue multipliers. We also need to look at, well, what do they do? What do they do on a day-to-day basis that makes them so great? And so what we found is there's kind of I want you to think of this as a virtuous circle. I want you to call this. I want you to think of this as the virtuous circle of sales management. You can tweet that out if you'd like. And so what we're seeing is that when sales managers have the necessary skills themselves to manage and coach sellers in a great way, then they're, and I'm reading this right to left, right? If they do that, if they have the skills to manage and coach sellers, then they're able to create sustained maximum energy from those sellers and thereby get maximum performance. So it's not just a revenue multiplier, it's the role of the sales manager as a figurehead, as a coach, as an example cannot be overestimated, right? If sales managers are sufficiently equipped and have the skill set, the mindset and the attitude to successfully manage and coach sellers, then they're able to support, to inspire energy from sellers and thereby get maximum performance. Now, when I say create and sustain maximum energy, let's think about it this way. Sales is a notoriously hard profession, right? We get beaten around all the time. Nobody wins all the time, which means we're accustomed to losing. We often lose for reasons that are beyond our control, or we don't have the influence that we would like. And so a sales manager that understands that and is able to speak to that and is able to create and sustain that energy is tremendously important. So let's move forward a little bit.
Yeah. A quick question, Algo. Somebody was just asking about the survey data. Does it come from any particular size of organization or any particular sectors, or is this across the board?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I can say across the board. So what we've seen is this is cross industry. So there's no overrepresentation of one particular industry. Now keep in mind that we are talking about B2B here, right? So we're not talking about B2C. We really are talking about business to business sales. We've seen, I think it was probably a 50% U.S. well, Americas, 50% Americas, about 30% EMEA, and then another 20% Asia Pacific in terms of respondent data set. And there was no, I mean, we saw these top performing sales organizations pop up in anywhere from the band of, let's say up to 5 million as the band of, 5 million and over or 1 billion and over. So we really saw this across the board. You will find top performing sales organizations that do this kind of stuff well, all levels and sizes of companies, across all geographies, including mature and emerging markets, and across all industries.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, because I would agree, because I think top performing sales organizations, regardless of size, do particular things well.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, back to that point about sales process, right? Because you might say, okay, yeah, a mature, high-performance sales process. If you're IBM, of course you have a mature, high-performance sales process because you've been doing this for 1,000 years. But that's not the case. We'll see firms that maybe not from the get-go, but once they reach a certain number of years, they'll have a mature sales process in place. So the maturity and performance are really linked. It's not about having a process in place that's been long-standing. It's really about a process that is mature in terms of the level of the process itself and the performance the process delivers. So yeah, happy to talk about that maybe also in the Q&A and kind of dive a little deeper into what that means. So back to what I was saying before. So when the manager has the necessary skills to actively coach and manage their people, energy levels go up and performance goes up. Why is that? Well, here's the key. We found that by and large in elite performance or elite and top performers, management makes this a priority. Management prioritizes and actively works to maximize the time they spend coaching their team versus doing other things. Other things like meetings, other things like selling themselves, other things like, looking at performance data and dashboards, things like that. So what we found is that, and the way to read the slide on the left is this is the percentage of respondents that strongly agreed with the statement in green, right? So management prioritizes and actively works to maximize the time they spend coaching their teams versus other activities. Look at that difference, right? 6 out of 10 more or less of people in elite performers agree. 1 out of 3 in the rest agrees, which begs, and this kind of made me think, and I think the reason for that is that it's not just about the sales manager. It's not fair to say, the rest probably just has bad sales managers. That's not true. That's not what we're saying here at all. That's not what we're seeing in real life at all. Management also needs to be free, needs to have the possibility, needs to have the mandate from leadership to make this a priority. And that's what these elite organizations are doing. They're saying we recognize the disproportionate impact of management in terms of impacting our sales and our revenue and our performance from a sales perspective. And we want to make sure that these guys have the time, the skill set, the energy, and the focus in order to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what we...
Argo, can I ask you a question? Do you think part of it too is that some organizations and a lot of people don't understand what coaching, and particularly coaching by sales managers, what that actually really means and what it is, and almost more importantly, what it's not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so for me, in the end, we're okay. So apologies. I'm going to take this up to the 30,000 foot view here. When I think of behavior change, and when I think of how can we inspire the right kinds of behaviors in people, whether they're sales managers or sellers or someone else, we really need to be talking about 3 things. We need to be talking about skill set, we need to be talking about mindset, and we need to be talking about behaviors. Unless people have the skill set to be able to do something, they will not do it, or they will do it poorly. So if management has not received any formal training on coaching, it's very hard to do that. Very few of us, few exceptions aside, are natural born coaches. There's a process to coaching. There are tools and methods for coaching. And sales coaching is different. Unfortunately, what a lot of organizations still do is they promote either the best seller or they promote someone who looks like they might be a good manager, and they say, congratulations, on Monday when you show up to the office, you become a manager. There's no formal training, there's no formal support. So the skill set part is missing. If the skill set part is missing, they won't go out and do it. That's the activity part or the behavior part. So if I don't know how to do something, I'm not going to stick my neck out and do it because I might fail. So if the skill set's not there, then behavior will be missing. If the behavior will be missing, then we over time will acquire a certain mindset. We will say things to ourselves like, well, I'm not a good manager. I don't know how to manage. I've never been taught how to coach. Coaching is not my responsibility. I should really be looking at dashboards and metrics. My job is to make sure that I report up to senior management, things like that. And so there's this kind of, call it the Holy Trinity, at least that's what I call it, the Holy Trinity of behavior change. It's really, again, skill set, mindset, and behavior. And those 3 really need to work together. And I think in a lot of organizations, people just don't, and again, management also doesn't get the support they need in order to be good at this, in order to be able to do this. So in a sense, you're right that many people don't know what coaching is. They may, of course, have a vague idea, but they may not know what it means in practice. But the problem is probably because nobody told them what it is, and they don't have a process to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the other part, because coaching is one thing, but also you need to know what to coach on, right? So I think tools like Pipeliner, for example, are great at really, using data in order to be able to look at someone's, whether it's an individual or a team performance, and then sussing out the factors that they need to be coached on, because you can't coach on everything, as you well know.
Yeah.
So I think part of the answer is also technology and tools and the data that you get from a tool like, for example, Pipeliner.
Yeah, I completely agree, Agard. I just think we could do a whole thing on coaching, obviously, because I think it's such a wide area. But it is very important that people understand that coaching is a skill, and it's very different from just managing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So I kind of started this story by saying, well, there's a small proportion of organizations out there, 7% elite, right, that have a vastly higher win rate. And what we found is that in management, that's kind of what I've been saying so far, management is a huge driver of that, because managers and the sales manager has a disproportionate impact on things like, the skill set of sellers, their energy levels, and their performance. But that's not all. This is a little surprising. What we found was that when we have excellent sales management in place, and we have things like a mature sales process, and we obviously have things like an above average win rate. What's interesting then is sellers become more motivated. So this is really interesting because in most sales organizations, at least unfortunately where I walk in, and some more than others, but by and large, I mean, sellers are great at finding excuses for why things are not working, right? It's the market, we don't have the right products, support's not working with me on this, whatever it is. You don't see that in these elite organizations. Look at that stat on the left, right? 85% or 83% of people inside these elite organizations agree that the culture drives and supports sellers' motivation to succeed. In other words, this is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Great sales management, great sales processes, mature sales processes, higher than average win rate. These sellers are out there and they're motivated. They're winning and they want to win more. So this is this virtuous circle that you're creating where sales management plays such an important role. So it's not just about win rates. It's about creating a great culture. It's about creating a great organization. It's about creating pride and a sense of accomplishment within people. Which, again, in a profession that's as tough as sales, this is really, really important, right? So talk about an intangible factor or a soft factor driving a large factor. What we're seeing here is exactly that. We're seeing this motivation driving a culture, and that translates into hard cash and revenue.
Yeah, I love this, Argo. I'm really glad you brought this up because, as you said, that's one of the factors that we took into account when building Pipeliners, that we provided the salesperson with the same views and tools that the sales manager has. So a motivated sales organization, a salesperson can self-manage and self-motivate themselves and see, where their gaps are, what they need to do next, where they need to focus and really drive themselves. So I love that idea of, culture, a winning mentality, a positive, outlook, all of those things contributing to a high-performing sales organization.
Yeah, and when I walk some of our clients through this, as we do, what I sometimes get as a reaction, which I love, is, Argo, this is great because this gives me data as a sales manager that I can take back to my management, to my leadership, where I can say, okay, guys, all that stuff we've been suspecting, all that stuff we've all been sensing, all that stuff we intuitively and instinctively know, well, here's some data to prove it. We need to invest in this. We need to invest in coaching. We need to invest in training. We need to invest in our sales process. We need to invest in driving value for our clients because in the end, that's going to pay off. And what I liked about what you said about, sellers self-managing, I think essentially every salesperson wants to do well, right?
Yeah.
But in order to do well, I'll go back to my little magic triangle, right? Behavior, skill set, mindset. What we're seeing is that if sales management plays their part and if organizations invest in sales training, and that's a part I really won't cover here because that's not the focus of the webinar, but what we're seeing is that the organization sellers, by and large, have a superior skill set in these elite performers, which helps them find and win the business consistently that they need and at a high level.
Yeah,
so what you're seeing here,
we call them salespreneurs because they are the entrepreneurs in the organization. So they're coached and by their sales manager, but they're really the entrepreneurs, the highly skilled. So we call them salespreneurs.
Okay. And so what we're seeing is that these guys in these organizations, in these elite organizations, across pretty much every aspect of what I would call the broad sales skill set, right? So things like filling the pipeline with leads, driving and winning sales opportunities, core and advanced consultative selling, growing existing accounts, developing C-level relationships, managing their own time and focus, managing a sales negotiations process. Across all of those, levels are dramatically higher in elite performers versus the rest. And the reason is, again, because of the role, and it's not one thing. I don't want anybody coming out of this webinar thinking, oh, there's this one thing that we have to, no, it's not. There's a small number of things that you need to master, and there's this intricate interplay, but if you here's the thing that's great. If you make minute adjustments on all of these, or at least on some of these, the net cumulative effect will be much larger than you would expect. So it's really this idea of a virtuous circle, right? There's these levers that you can work on, included with sales management is one of those, that you can work on in order to truly propel your organization forward. But look at some of these differences, right? I mean, look at the one in the middle on advanced consultative selling. 70% of sellers in elite organizations agree that they have what it takes to win these deals at an advanced level, versus 1 in 3 in the rest. Filling the pipeline, another important one. I can't think of any organization that can survive without a healthy pipeline. Big difference there as well. Managing time, focus, and personal effectiveness. You know, what you call salespreneurs, taking ownership, taking responsibility for your own results. Massively bigger in these elite organizations. So I've sort of covered this one in a sense, but you know, maybe this is a good recap slide. So what we're seeing is that in these organizations, there's a more positive culture that supports motivation. Sellers' attitudes towards their organization is positive. So there's none of that, you know, coffee machine, water cooler talk. You know, kind of, you know, blaming the organization for everything that goes wrong. No. These guys believe in their organization. They're proud to be a part of that organization. They're also proud to be a salesperson. Like, I walk into some firms, and unfortunately, you know, the term salesperson or account manager is a bit of a dirty word. Not here. These people are positive about their role in sales. They see themselves as professionals. And of course, they're going to actively pursue top performance and create the energy that they need in order to get these results. So again, it's kind of that what I love about this is that this clearly highlights the importance of the soft factors, right? Attitude, culture, motivation, mindset, energy in producing these results. And the results are clearly the results are clearly there.
Yeah, I think Argo, this is a really important thing too, because as you mentioned earlier, you know, sales is the toughest profession in many ways, and it's one where you have to get used to a lot of rejection, etc. So if you don't have a mindset like this, if you're not really, you really are positive about your product, about your organization, about yourself as a professional, about, you know, your business acumen, your will to win, you know, you love what you're doing, you love what you're selling, it's going to be really hard for you to be successful in a role where you're going to get a lot of rejection that's often completely outside of your own control. So I think attitude is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make one final point, and then we'll do a recap, and then we'll go into Q&A. So we looked at, one of the factors we looked at is we didn't just look at sales management, we also looked at leadership. And when I talk about leadership, I define it too as sales management is the part of the organization that actively manages sellers sellers, account managers, business developers, whatever you want to call them, right? Leadership is the level that manages the sales managers. So in some organizations that's SVPs of sales or something like that. In some organizations that's business leadership. That really depends on the organization. But here is a key point. Change starts at the top. And that's exactly what we found in this research. So look at the difference. I'm going to read this one left to right. So our company leaders prioritize improving sales force effectiveness. 80% in elite performers versus about 60% in the rest. So in elite organizations and in top performers, company leadership truly takes this stuff seriously and makes it a priority. They come out and they clearly say sales force effectiveness, sales performance is huge for us. It's important for us. And to the right, when they set it a priority, things actually get done. So a big drop there. And so what I'm seeing here, the two ways that I like to read this research is, well, in elite organizations and top performers, company leadership prioritizes this stuff, and when they do, it actually gets done. In the rest, well, not so much, right? It's not so much of a priority, and even when they make it a priority, it kind of gets sort of done maybe half the time. That's no recipe for success, right? So Let me just kind of recap here, and then we'll go into some Q&A hopefully. So five things, five key messages that you want to take away from this. Number one is top performers have more effective sales managers. They have more effective sales managers. They spend more of their time coaching sellers. They have the skill set and the mindset and the behaviors required to do so, and they have a clear mandate from the organization. Number two, top performers prioritize sales coaching activities much more frequently. There's a real coaching culture there. And it's not coaching in the sense that it's not broad-based, it's sales coaching and it's very specific, right? Number three, top performers and value-driving sales organizations have much more motivating cultures. Much more motivating cultures means that people are motivated. I'm not talking about rah, rah, hooray, let's walk out of a motivational speaker speech. I'm talking about ongoing day-to-day motivation, pride in your work, pride in your organization, the way you see your products and services, the way that you see your position versus your competitors, your self-image as a seller, your image of the sales profession, all much more positive in these top-performing organizations. Top performers have significantly, substantially more skilled sellers and sales managers. Remember that slide with the skill set, kind of what I would say the basic skill set of a seller? Everything from prospecting to negotiation to generating leads to advanced and core consultative selling, all much higher within these organizations. And finally, leadership makes it a priority, and when they do, it gets done. So these are kind of the five key takeaways from the research. Keep in mind, I've only talked about sales management. I could do another webinar on sales process and another one on sales training, but I think for this one, we explicitly decided to focus on sales management. So with that, John, you want to open the floor up for questions? All right. John, I'm not hearing you. I'm just hoping that doesn't mean that my connection dropped off.
No, I'm here. Oh. What I wanted to do is just do a quick poll here again to see, is sales coaching a priority in your organization? So remember, this is anonymous. So just go ahead and give us a couple of seconds here. Give us an indication about whether sales coaching is a priority in your organization. And while we're doing this, I'll go on the idea of sales coaching. Do you believe that, number one, the reason why maybe it's not done in many organizations is because people don't understand what it is, or they don't have the tools, or they just don't have the will to do it or see the value in it?
Well, out of everything you said, I think that, and this is the biggest misconception perhaps, it certainly is, it's not a matter of will. It's not a matter of will and motivation. Every single sales manager that I speak with essentially wants to be successful, and they understand that in order to do that, they need to coach their people. I think the challenge is there is no clear definition of what coaching is, mm-hmm. And what to coach on. There is no clear understanding of, well, how do I do that? Right? Because we're not talking about holding a quarterly meeting. Or a huddle on Monday morning. That's not coaching. What we're talking about is a structured process with clearly defined steps, outcomes, and phases to coach an individual seller or a team of sellers. And so what I think the answer, by the way, John, I think the answer is in the poll. Yeah. We're looking at a sales coaching that made a priority in your organization. Well, you know what? 64 people said a little to not really. That's not, and that's the biggest, that 6.5 out of 10, right?
Yeah, and I think what this really speaks to, and I think just in general is, as you said, I mean, it's largely a leadership issue as well, is because you have to recognize the value in this and realize that in any successful organization, in any successful endeavor in life, I mean, we use sports all the time as analogies, but coaching is incredibly important, and there we have. In most organizations, you frontline the face of your organization, the ones that interact mostly with the public and your prospects and customers, it's salespeople. So why would you not coach them to be the best that they could possibly be? It's almost counterintuitive that you wouldn't.
Mm. Absolutely. Unfortunately, in your average organization, there are so many competing priorities. There is so much strain on resources. This is the long-term battle, John, and you know this as well as I do. This is the battle that we're out there fighting every day. There's a quick fix for this, right? And again, please don't come away from this webinar saying, "Oh, all we need to do is do some coaching training for our sales managers, and all will be well with the world." That's not. This is just one lever, one driver of top performance, but it is a very, very big one. And I guarantee you that if you put in place even some kind of a coaching, if there isn't any, right? Even some kind of a structure, even some kind of support for sales management to do this, and then you hold them, in a nice way, you hold them accountable to go out and do it, and you encourage the right types of behaviors, you will see an uptick in hard sales results, wins, revenue growth, margin protection, accounts being won and or kept.
Yeah, here's an interesting question, Argon. I don't know it'd be interesting to get your answer to it. Somebody here said they want to be an elite performer. So how do they identify the companies that are investing in human capital, just particularly in sales? So if I'm a sales person, I want to be the best professional I can be. How do I identify an organization that might be the right one to join?
I was going to say, shoot me an email. I'll send you our client list. But
good one.
No, of course not. So no, here's the thing. It's a great question. I love the question, and I'm going to try to give it an honest answer instead of something quick and witty. So here's the deal. I think number one is you want to talk to some people who already work there. That's going to give you, and by talking to people, you can do things like Glassdoor, for example, Glassdoor.com, which is a great resource. I think the other one is just talk to people who are already there. I've never gone into a role myself without speaking with others in the other individuals inside a firm first. I think brand is a big giveaway as well. So organizations with a well-respected brand who perform well tend to do well. Let's flip it around. It's virtually impossible for an organization to be successful in sales terms, right? Making revenue, growing revenues, protecting accounts, winning accounts. It's virtually impossible to do that unless you have at least some pockets of excellence in terms of sales management and in terms of performance. So I would look for those organizations that look good from the outside. I would validate that by doing some research and talking to some folks inside the organization, obviously in sales. And then, that's probably going to give you the best, I think, the best idea.
Okay, that's great. Well, we don't have any more questions from the floor. We had a lot of questions during the actual webinar itself, most of which you answered during your presentation, so we didn't need to interrupt you, Argo. So I'd like to thank you again for today. This was a really fascinating and an important presentation. Because obviously for any organization to succeed, they need to have move their salespeople into at least top performing, if not get them all the way to elite. I also just wanted to let everybody know who's on the webinar today. Pipeliner has a new release coming at the end of this month. Again, it's a release that's of our product that's focused around efficiency, productivity, coaching, and analysis, all the kind of things that Argo talked about today, because that's what we built our product on, a foundation of providing both salespeople and sales management with the tools to be able to be top performing, to be able to visually see where they needed to focus their time. And it's been a fascinating presentation today, and it really does validate the work that we're doing with our product to see that these are the things that really count to be an elite organization. So Argo, just to finish, if you would just want to give people some information about how they can contact you and any other parting words you have before we end the webinar today.
Yeah, not much in terms of parting words, John. I think you said it well, and I think I kind of did the recap already. But here's what I will say. So don't worry about my contact details. Tomorrow, at the latest, I will reach out to everyone who signed up for the webinar. I will send you a copy of the research report, so you can look at the broader data set, not just sales coaching, but also all the other factors that we've identified. And over the next couple of days or weeks, you'll get some additional resources from me. especially if you're in a sales management and or sales leadership role. I hope that'll be helpful for you. Obviously, if you have any questions, all you need to do is hit reply at that point, and yeah, you'll end up right on my doorstep.
All right. Well, again, thanks everybody, and in particular, thanks to Ago for a really great webinar with so much information packed into such a short space of time. So this is fantastic, and as you said, you will get the Ago is going to send you out the report. The recording will also automatically be available to you. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you at another webinar soon. Bye now.